Welcome back to the mat. We're going to be working with Cobra or Bhujangasana. There's a lot of variations with Cobra, so there's a lot of food for thought. And so if you're new to my style of teaching, you may find that the technique that we're going to use with Cobra is very different than what you're used to. It's all about core integration as we work with extension. So traditionally, most of us are used to Cobra, if Lainey brings her hands under her shoulders, where we inhale and just kind of push ourselves up into Cobra. And for some people that are fairly mobile, that's no problem. They're like, okay, yeah, this feels great. But for the mass majority of people, she can come back down, Lainey. What ends up happening is that force of pushing into your arms without much other work ends up jamming into the lower back, and there's so much pain and discomfort for so many people that they feel like that's just how it's supposed to be. One of my students that I've had for about 9 years, after about 2 or 3 classes, and I had given her a cue and an adjustment to activate her core and lift slightly different, she started crying in class because she didn't realize that Cobra wasn't supposed to hurt, that it wasn't supposed to feel this way. And she was a student with a back fusion, and she did have a fairly strong back, but she simply wasn't practicing the mechanics of Cobra safely, and so as a result, she wasn't getting an effective result, and that means success in her body. So I'm going to show you the Cobra roll-up, but first I'm going to show you a modified variation of Cobra, which is a great go-to posture if you are stiffer in the spine or maybe a little bit more timid to Cobra itself, and that pose is Sphinx. So when we set up Sphinx, we want to bring our elbows straight under our shoulders. What happens for many people is again, body awareness is developing, so they're not quite sure where their shoulder is. So they end up with their elbows too far forward or too far tucked back. So as a teacher, it's very easy for me to come over to the side or come from behind and simply draw a straight line down and say, hey, your shoulders need to be back here. So a simple, easy trick that definitely serves us well. From there, I like the sink down method to pull up so they can see the two extremes. Lainey's going to kind of sink in her upper body and then anchor down through the pubis bone, so she's tipping her pubis bone down into the floor, which has made more length in her lower back, and then exhaling, bringing some strength into her belly, pressing up, and then bringing the top of her head towards the sky. Awesome. As she comes into this into this Sphinx, we want to think about maximizing the openness of the front of her shoulders. All I did was take my first 2 fingers and brush them kind of from the outer clavicle to the outside of the shoulders. And if you watch it again, you can see her shoulders kind of open up. As far as the arms go, there's a couple of variations that you can work with. Traditionally, we work with palms face down, which is fine and great. You can definitely work with that. You can also try palms face in. I'm going to grab a block really quick. And placing a block between the hands can offer a little bit more kind of stability, or she can also really challenge herself and try to turn her palms face up, pushing her thumbs into the floor, pushing into the edges of the blocks. A little bit more challenging, especially on the rotation of the shoulder. No matter what variation you choose for Sphinx, really crucial that you push down from the elbow to the fingertips like you're karate chopping the floor or cutting a thick piece of cheese. So as Lainey pushes down in her forearms, you could just see she lifted up. And then step 2 is to actually pull back on her arms. Because of the skin to your muscle tissue is a little bit wiggly, your arm is going to move maybe about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch, but it's not a whole lot. So you're pushing down and pulling back as you lengthen up through the crown of the head. Keeping your front belly muscles strong, there's some length here, but your back is also protected. As you work your way down your lower body, it's just like Ardha Salabhasana. The lower body is anchored. I'm pushing the tops of my feet into the floor. I'm lengthening through the ankles evenly. Another adjustment cue may even just think about lifting the kneecaps slightly up off the floor to ensure the legs are anchored and strong. This isn't a snooze posture by any means. There's a lot of power to a pose like Sphinx. So it may be wise to not even think about it or call it out like a modification. This is a pose and a powerful one in and of itself. Slowly bring yourself down. As you progress, and I would call a progression into Cobra as a progression only because there is more height involved or more extension involved. And that means that the spine has to be willing to do it, the hip flexors, and the lower back. So there's a lot of components to a pose like Cobra. And with this new variation, we're asking ourselves to lift with the core, that deep transversus, that rectus, and stack our spine as we roll our upper body to kind of be set up on top versus just hi-ya or karate chop our body up where the lower back takes the brunt of that heat or of that force. So again, keeping your lower body anchored, your pubis bone and tailbone anchoring towards the floor. Lainey's going to come up in kind of a rolling-like motion. So as she comes up, she's going to go really slow. She's going to pull up through her belly and almost round her upper body forward. Keep rolling up, using some arm strength, and then begin to stack her body as she comes up into Cobra. Now Lainey has good pliability, so she's fairly lifted. But that may not be you. You may be a little bit lower, and that's totally okay. Where people go wrong in Cobra is they don't push down into the hands. And if Lainey pushes into her palms even more, her shoulders are going to drop and her neck is going to lengthen. Versus wearing your ears or shoulders like earrings. Exactly. Nice, bring yourself down, give yourself a break. Second thing we want to watch for is it is absolutely, positively not necessary for you to jam your arms straight. I know that this is often talked about in the yoga community, and I really want you to kind of maybe stray away from that because having a straight arm does not ensure success in the spine and in the integration of the core. If anything, I often encourage my students to keep a bend in their elbows because then they also get the tricep work, the back of the arms. That is a component to a pose like Cobra. So if Lainey again rolls up, inhale on the floor, she's going to exhale, roll herself up and stack, pushing down into her palms. She's also now going to pull back on her hands and think about her heart pushing forward. So she's getting this internal space now. Awesome. If I feel a little bit weaker in the triceps and upper body, often what will happen is the elbows will flare out. You'll see a lot of this. That's a good sign that the student is too high and they're not using the right mechanics. So I can just simply bring her shoulders back, turn her elbows in, or even cue her to come down towards the floor a little bit. To come out of the pose, she can simply exhale, lay herself back down onto the floor. When working with Cobra in a sun salutation like this, often, if once you come down from chaturanga to the floor, I'll have them on the floor. Inhale, anchor the pubis bone. Exhale, roll up into Cobra. Inhale at the top, inflate your lungs like an umbrella. Exhale, roll yourself back down. Inhale, curl the toes under. And then move back into downward facing dog on the exhale. Lainey doesn't have to do it, but that would be a nice slow progression in a sun salutation in using this pose in a functional way. Great job.